Thank you, Chair. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Mr. Matthews, and those sitting at the table with you, your responses to the questions that we as parliamentarians have for you. Looking at your website, it states that for the year 2024-25, the Government of Canada only met 53% of their department's mandated goals. What are the consequences, if any, when departments continue to fail or barely reach their goals? And this may follow up on Mr. Gasparo's questions. But when 53% of departments don't meet their, or when 47% of departments don't meet their mandated goals, what is the recourse of the Treasury Board Secretariat?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when we are establishing goals for departments, or when they are establishing them with our help, we do want stretch goals because you do want to aim high. That number is low. I'm not entirely sure exactly which figure the member is looking at, but I know two that are on TBS's departmental results report that are kind of jump off the page. High volume service. The system as a whole is down around 52%. And also the number of IT systems that we would view as being healthy. Again, we're in, I believe below 50%. And those are two numbers where you have to dig in and find out why. With the health of IT, it's a question of resourcing and prioritizing the spend in IT. On the high volume services, you can't really be generic about it. You have to look at each one and say, okay, what's going on there? Was their take up bigger than we expected? Were they unable to hire staff? What's the background on this? So it really is a case-by-case basis. To answer the question, okay, what's the recourse? Treasury Board, with the Treasury Board Secretary, with the support or endorsement of Treasury Board, can put conditions around improvement on departments, or they could put additional reporting requirements on departments as a way to try and keep an eye on things. But it starts with, what's your plan to improve?
Ms. Block, before you can continue, can you move your mic up a tiny bit? Bit more?
There we go.
Bit more?
A little more?
There we go. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So the Department of Citizenship and Immigration failed to meet 55.6% of their departmental targets in 2024-25. Now they're requesting an additional $624 million in funding through the supplementary estimates. Why is the Government of Canada rewarding departments with more funding when they fail to meet more than half of their departmental targets?
Thank you, Chair. And again, you have to really look into the detail of which targets are not being met and why. In some cases, the answer to meeting more of the targets is indeed resources. So it's not really an effective punishment to hold back resources if you've got a department that is not, in general, meeting its goals. So you have to really understand what is the reason. And I think more detailed questions about which ones are being met and which ones are not are probably more appropriate for the department in question. But I would just reiterate that the instinct to withhold resources for those departments who are not maybe doing as well as we would like may not be the right instinct.
Well, one could make a number of guesses as to what is going on in the Department of Citizenship and Immigration in not meeting their departmental targets. I'll move on. Regarding the operating expenditures for the interim federal health program, less than a week ago, the Standing Committee for Health called for the Auditor General to investigate this program amidst rising concerns over the ballooning costs. This year, an additional $598 million in funding will be added to the program through these estimates. So why is Treasury Board looking for approval to give a program $142 million more than last year when there is an audit pending for allegations of abuse within it?
Certainly. So the request has been made for an audit, but obviously until there is an audit done and there's conclusions, they're not proven. The recipients of the funding in this envelope are entitled to it. There's a backlog of cases. And so there's other measures being looked at to possibly better control the growth in this area as well. And I've not spoken to the Auditor General about a planned audit yet.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Matthews, according to the TPS website, GC Infobase, in 2024-25, Public Safety Canada set a total of 28 goals, and 14 of them are sitting at 0%. This is a department where 98% of the executives received bonuses in 23-24 when they met only 35.7% of their goals. The department is requesting an additional $43 million in supplementary spending in these estimates. And I guess my question for you is, given the Treasury Board sets the policy framework for how bonuses are awarded, what do you have to say when 98% of executives receive bonuses within a department when they haven't even met half of their stated goals?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, you would have to look at which goals are not being met and why. So if there are goals that are not being met because the required approvals weren't taken, et cetera, or something was delayed, you have to really dig in and determine what the cause is. In terms of those results and how we are monitoring a TBS, we are launching a new risk and compliance framework that will help us better assess how departments are doing in terms of where they are carrying risk, and some of those risks could be around delivery. In terms of Treasury Board Secretariat involvement in the awarding of performance pay to executives, that is up to the department's deputy head to make those determinations in terms of whether their executives are meeting what was asked of them or not. And so we don't have line of sight into those decisions. That is a deputy head decision.
But the Treasury Board is responsible for setting the policy framework. When you see incidents like this, where a department is not meeting even half of the goals they set, regardless of what the excuses or reasons may be, has the Treasury Board had a conversation in regards to reforming how bonuses are rewarded?
So regarding performance pay and linked to departments achieving their published targets or results, I have not had any of those conversations. I can tell you, in terms of the approach we take at TBS for our own employees, we are looking at whether the executives met the expectations in their own performance agreement. Some are tied to delivering on certain programs, and some are not. Some are more corporate related. So you really have to understand why the targets are not being met, and then the link to the executives before passing any judgment, I think, on whether there's a bigger problem.
Thank you very much, Chair. That is all that I have for today.
Colleagues, if you don't mind, I just have a couple of quick questions for you, Mr. Matthews, and a couple of maybe just for an answer and a couple maybe take away with you. I'm glad Mrs. Block brought up the issue about the bonuses and the lack of, alignment with what's achieved. And I'm glad it's brought up because I've brought it up in public accounts, probably many different ministers and many different department heads, and the excuse is always, or the answer is always, well, we follow Treasury Board guidelines. And I'm sure if you wish, I can go through all the blues from the many times we brought it up, but they always blame Treasury Board. Yes, we failed massively, but we're only following Treasury Board guidelines. So I think the onus seems to be placed on the guidelines. You mentioned about not passing judgment. I think when 98% of executives and management are getting bonuses when results are failing, I think it was, according to GC Infobase, 47% of the results were not achieved. Previous year was, from memory, close to 50. Previous year, 53%. So we have this massive failure, and departments are always saying, well, we're just following the rules. So I'll put that back with you. I just want to follow up. I'm glad you talked about departmental plans. I noticed, and when you look at the departmental results, fully 19% of last year's departmental results didn't have or had no results available. And I brought this up, and I know you're probably laughing inside because we bring this up every year for the last several years, or to be achieved in the future. And of course, the estimates are based on a 1-year achievement. I'm hoping that you will actually stop that procedure or practice in the departments where they're actually presenting departmental plans to Parliament, but without actual goals attached. So I do appreciate that. The stretch goals, I wonder if you could get back to us. I know you mentioned, okay, departments are mission because of stretch goals. We actually go through and look, and a fair amount of where they've missed the results, they've actually dropped less than last year. And if you look at the departmental plans, I'd be happily bet money more than 50% of the goals for next year are actually below what they actually achieved the previous year. So I don't think it's because they have stretch goals when most of them are actually showing lower. Their goals are to actually achieve less than they have previous years and the previous year before that. So I'll just leave that with you. I do have a quick question. I want to follow up with Mr. Kelly, who's left the room, about the PBO and the CER. Like, the PBO wrote to the 5 departments asking for the information. He didn't write to Treasury Board. He wrote to the 5 ministers. But the Comptroller General responded. Like, who directed her not to provide the information to the PBO? And I am going to see, like, it was October 30th we asked the minister, and he said yes. I know October 31st, the cabinet was briefed by the Comptroller General and others on the CER, but still not released. Like, who would have directed her to refuse to hand over the data to the PBO that's required under the Parliament of Canada Act?
So a couple of points in there, Mr. Chair. One, the decision for the Comptroller General to write to the PBO and say, we're unable to respond right now. It was not a no, it was we can't respond within this deadline. And there was no consultation on the deadline. It was just, and so that decision was taken between myself, the Comptroller General, and colleagues at the Department of Finance. And it was just felt, because all 5 were in the same boat, that just one response would be a useful thing to say.
Okay, October 31st, when the Comptroller General briefed the Cabinet Committee on this, you're saying she briefed him with incomplete numbers?
The Comptroller General would not have briefed Cabinet Committee on.
So you're saying Comptroller General did not brief anyone on this?
On the CER?
Yes.
The Comptroller General would not have been briefing on the CER. No, she will now be monitoring results. But the decision was around, we know all 5 aren't in a position to respond, so we just thought one response was better. This was not a no, we will not respond. It's we can't respond in this timeline. So the 5 departments in question are all working to respond as quickly as they can, and those responses to the PBO, to the request, will come from the departments on behalf of their minister, not from TBS.
Okay. So I appreciate that. So the decision made by yourself and finance, but not by the departments themselves. When the PBO wrote to the departments, no offense, not to you, not to finance, but to the departments.
That's fair, Mr. Chair. There was dialogue between Treasury Board Secretariat and departments about this. It was not just written out of the blue without consulting departments. They were not in a position to respond.
Okay. I think we will agree to disagree, and we hope that we will see the document or the information very soon. I do echo Mr. Kelly's comments. It's bizarre to ask us to vote on a budget on the cuts when the cuts aren't, the information is not shared with us, and then to sit and say, well, we have to inform others what the cuts will be after Parliament, uninformed. This is what the cuts. But I appreciate your feedback. I'm glad you were able to join us today. Mr. Matthews has been with us so much. I think he's reached OGO Super Elite status, so you get a complimentary upgrade on your next visit with us. Anyways, thanks very much for being with us. Colleagues, I have a couple of quick announcements just to update everyone. December 2nd, we had set aside for our meeting with Mr. Guzman and Secretary Fuhr. Unfortunately, they have stated it was for a 2-hour meeting. They have stated they will not honor our motion, and they are refusing to meet separately. They will only appear together for 1 hour. I'm not asking for a decision or anything from the committee yet, but we'll bring it up at the next meeting. We've given them several alternatives, but they will not appear separately and will only appear for 1 hour. We have, you saw the note, December 11th is Canada Post now. We do apologize. I think we said repeatedly it's the 4th, but it is December 11th, so I appreciate everyone's patience with that. December 4th, we will have in person for 1 hour the representative from Stellantis. The second hour we had made available, we had invited the Minister for PSPC. We made several dates available, and unfortunately the Minister will not make himself available to defend his estimates. December 4th, we're looking at the second hour being PSPC officials. So I'll leave that with everyone, and we can take up the issue of the motion calling for 2 hours, separate hours for Mr. Guzman and the Minister, and then how we wish to follow up with the Minister for PSPC at our next meeting. Again, witnesses, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate the information and the feedback you provided. Colleagues, thanks very much for the patience as we play around with our schedule. We are adjourned.